Our founding fathers would have absolutely predicted the weaponization. I would have been court-martialed in a New York minute.
The divide in the Republican Party is a critical one at this point because we need those fascists to weaken each other. If I could just state it very clearly, I am concerned about the balance of power on the side of the Republican Party because, well, we're dealing with the Republican Party that is a party of fascism at this point. When we look at the agenda of Ron DeSantis and we look at someone like Donald Trump, who is eagerly attempting to outflank Ron DeSantis to the right to see who can be the most draconian. This is the kind of campaign that we're looking at in 2024. It will do humanity all the good in the world if Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are able to eviscerate each other sufficiently enough that they come out of the primaries weakened, because we do not need, and this should go without saying, but we simply cannot afford for the Republican Party that as it currently exists, the Republican Party that has declared a holy war on everything that is not white, male, Christian centered. That Republican Party that has declared war on the LGBTQIA community. They have declared war on blackness. They have declared war on black history. Ron DeSantis has banned African-American history in the state of Florida. He is looking to bring his war on woke to the entire country. He is looking to bring his war on immigration to the entire country. And so is Donald Trump. So it becomes extremely important for us, those people who are simply trying to have progress, who are looking for the liberation of all people. It is important for us to understand when our enemies are fighting each other, we want to sit back and watch them fight. We want to sit back and ensure that they can eviscerate each other as much as possible, because we cannot afford either one of those fascists to get into power. Ron DeSantis, who now is in the unique position, the uncomfortable position, because again, he has the charisma of a Borg, but he is having to do a balancing act here. He is having to pretend to be concerned about Donald Trump, meanwhile knowing this is possibly Ron DeSantis's best path to the nomination. Let's take a look at him.
And what happens is, when there's no constitutional accountability, our founding fathers would have absolutely predicted the weaponization that we've seen with these agencies, particularly Justice and FBI, because when you don't have constitutional accountability, human nature is such that they will abuse their power. And that's what's happened. Nobody has held them accountable. And, you know, look, when I was in Congress, I remember, you know, Hillary had the emails with the classified. And my view was, well, gee, you know, as a naval officer, if I would have taken classified to my apartment, I would have been court-martialed in a New York minute. And yet they seem to not care about that. And is there a different standard for a Democrat Secretary of State versus a former Republican president? I think there needs to be one standard of justice in this country. Let's enforce it on everybody and make sure we all know the rules. You can't have one faction of society weaponizing the power of the state against factions that it doesn't like. And that's what we've seen.
Ron DeSantis, I will give him this much. He is not a master orator, but he is a master propagandist. His way with words in that particular sentence, where he set it up to say, you know, what about Hillary Clinton's emails, to enter that into the discourse, of course, to distract and deflect. However, he never really fully said that he believed in it, that there was a double standard. He said that there's possibly a double standard, and I think that there should be the same standard. It's actually a really well-written speech from a propaganda perspective. And this is what Ron DeSantis does really well that Donald Trump doesn't do well. Ron DeSantis has the ability to stay on script and to deliver a strategic hit for his campaign. And for his agenda, not just his campaign. We've seen in the state of Florida just how effective Ron DeSantis can be. And it was interesting that he alluded back to his time as a naval officer, a JAG officer, when we do know now that there are credible allegations against Ron DeSantis for his time serving as the supervisor of torture at Guantanamo Bay as a JAG officer. So it's just a little ironic that he would bring that up when that is, in terms of his history, one of the most damning portions of his resume that he's trying to keep as quiet as possible. But he brought it up. And so I think it's something that we should constantly remind the people that we're dealing with a presidential candidate who has not only declared war on blackness, he has declared war on science. He has declared war on public education. He's declared war on the LGBTQIA community, but he also has a past of being the bad cop as he oversaw torture, waterboarding at Guantanamo Bay. That's who we have running for president. And so it is important, I think, to see how the trial that Jack Smith is getting ready to commence is going to impact the Republican nominations for president, because while both of these candidates should stay as far away from the White House as possible, I would argue, and I would stand by the fact that I believe that Ron DeSantis is far more trouble for democracy itself, for freedom. Ron DeSantis is the truest threat to this democracy. And Donald Trump is not a far second. In fact, he might be tied for the kind of threat that Donald Trump. But Donald Trump's threat is unique because it's coupled with his stupidity. You know, Donald Trump needed the insurrection of January 6th to avoid exactly what he's facing right now. The only path that Donald Trump has to not having accountability is the off chance that he can completely get away with this, that he could be found not guilty. Also, there's a possibility that the president, Joe Biden, could pardon Donald Trump just for the sake of the empire. We'll talk about some of those implications. But the truth of the matter is that Donald Trump's real strategy to get away with not only these documents, but everything else that he did while he was in the White House is the fact that he is willing to overthrow this democracy. I mean, January 6th was an indicator of how far this man is willing to go in order to maintain power. But the reason he has to maintain power is because he is so cavalier with his arrogance that he believed he could get away with anything. He believed that before he became president. And so when Donald Trump became president, it boosted his ego to the point of, well, his own destruction. I'm reminded of the scripture, pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before the fall. This is most certainly the case with Donald Trump. Because of his arrogance and his ego, he put himself in a position where the only way that he could possibly avoid criminal charges was to try to overthrow the government. And I believe that they are still trying to do that to this day. Ron DeSantis is not too far away from it, but Ron DeSantis is smart enough to use the mechanisms of these institutions. Ron DeSantis doesn't have to have January 6th because Ron DeSantis can execute it quietly through the system.